Why is it that the vast majority of Reiki practitioners and holistic wellness practitioners in general struggle with their business? Why is it that so many are not able to get the momentum behind their practice, to find the clients, to give the image that they need, to be able to get the exposure that's going to put them in front of the right people at the right time? I would bet that that is 98%, at least it seems like it, of all wellness practitioners, holistic healthcare practitioners, Reiki practitioners, and so on. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I think this is the case and where this figure is coming from and how we can get you in that 2% of the population that's actually going to be in front of the clients at the right time. This whole idea for this video came up in a recent conversation with a Reiki practitioner in the United States who I really value his practice, his trajectory, his history. And in that discussion, he nailed the point, I think. And the point was, the way that he put it, was the commodification of Reiki. And to me, this is the critical point. This is the point why 98% of all practitioners are going to fail in their trajectory with their business. The commodification of their practice, of their learning, of their trajectory. And so what does that mean? What is commodification? Well, a commodity is something, obviously, that you consume, right? It's something that you buy in order to consume. So the transaction is finite in our mind, in our practice, in our thinking. The way that we approach this thing, it's finite in nature. So when we commoditize something, we're looking at it as an immediate fix. And in the Reiki world, in the holistic health world, it is completely commodified. You can learn Reiki online, all levels, back to back in a day. You can go on to Udemy and pay like $20 to get all your certifications. You can go online and upload your Reiki certificates to all these quasi-official seeming Reiki governing bodies. All of that is commodification because none of it has any substance, right? And if we can do things like learn EMDR or Reiki or yoga or whatever it is in a super concentrated amount of time, then we're not viewing the practice with authenticity. We're not viewing it with honesty, and we're not viewing it with the rigor that is needed in order for this to become your career, right? Think about that commodification in your other aspects of life. We go to university and study topics for years to get a job in that field, right? So for me, for instance, my background prior to Reiki and prior to moving into holistic wellness is economics and astronomy. It's what I studied in college. I've been studying both of those subjects for a very long time. And it was only after about 8 years of focused study on those topics that I was able to get a job in those fields. Why do we not attach that same rigor and honesty and depth of practice to Reiki and to holistic wellness, right? How is it that you can learn a modality in a weekend and then go out and act like you are now a practitioner? I see this time and time again. People have just got their Reiki Master Certificate and boom, they're offering healing sessions. Boom, they're taking clients. Boom, they've got a website up. That's fine. You need to do those things. You need to get those things up. But the commodification of it, the idea that we are treating this as a transactional event is the problem. And this is why it's the problem. This is the specific reason why this is a problem, because quick fixes are never a fix. They're never a long-term fix. I wish they were. How much easier life would be if we could have these quick fixes and then boom, problem is solved, right? In the West, that's the mentality, right? Not even in the West, actually. In a consumption-based society, that's the mentality, right? Take a pill for this ailment, take a diet pill for this thing. You know, you can figure out all of these things that never actually work, right? Nothing ever actually comes through because we're trying to get a quick fix. We're trying to take an immediate product and find the solution without putting in any effort. That's very different to the practice of Reiki in the East, right? Where there's traditions of austerity, where there's traditions of practice and depth of knowledge that goes back many hundreds or even thousands of years in particular practices, right? And the adherence to tradition is very important because it ensures that the mindset is not stuck on the immediacy of outcome. So many times in the practice of Reiki, this immediacy of outcome is the Achilles heel of the practitioner, right? Because let me explain what I mean by that. when we position ourselves in a way that the thing that we're offering, like in this case, a Reiki service, is going to have an immediate outcome on the client, right? They're going to have immediate benefits. When you are positioning yourself like this, or when a teacher is positioning a course like this, like they've just downloaded the next thing and it's 10 times more powerful or whatever. Here's the Achilles heel to all of this, is that eventually the student or the client will recognize that the things that they were promised are not happening, right? The things that they said they would get from that session, they're either not feeling it or they're not feeling it deep enough. So when we commoditize things, we look for immediate results, but immediate results never, ever happen. Full stop. It's the same with everything else in life, right? It never happens. It takes long, hard work to get these things accomplished, right? And as we end up moving through that, so a normal trajectory is that you have studied Reiki maybe and you've become a Reiki master practitioner and you're ready to open up your website and you're ready to open your business and so on. That's the normal trajectory, right? But what happens when the individual who has learned these things from the immediacy of results or from the desire of immediate results? What happens when those results don't come? What happens when the going gets tough, right? What happens when we are in our practice or in our business and we don't see the growth that we're hoping, right? This is where 98% of people will just give up. And so this is not a video to play back in your mind when you're starting your website. It's not a video to play back in your mind when you're starting to get your flyers out or your voice heard or your image, your social media image, your YouTube image or whatever. It's not a video for that moment. This video is for the moment that's going to happen 4, 5, 6 weeks down the road, right? When your videos don't get views, when your clients don't call, when your website doesn't work, when your promotion and your logo and all of the things that you've tried to make, when they're not working. This is the moment that separates the 98% of people from the 2% who are going to continue on. And in that conversation with the Reiki practitioner in the States, we were going back and forth about this and hearing, kind of like, wow, like our stories are the same because we've been through all of that, right? We've been through all of the failures. And I likened it to that really famous scene in Rocky, when he's just getting beaten up on the ropes and his wife yells out to him and he hears, his wife's name or he hears his wife's voice, and he gets off the ropes and he finds the strength to keep going on one more time. That one more day, getting up the next day after you haven't had clients for 4 weeks, right? That next day is going to separate you from the other 98% of people who will just give up. Full stop. So the long, hard yards that you are doing when it is the most difficult, right? When your website crashes, your videos don't work, when your clients back out, when your trip falls through, when your retreat falls through, right? When your trainings don't get booked. What do you do? What do you do in that moment? That's what this video is for, that moment. That moment is when you need to get back up on your feet. You need to look at yourself with objectivity. You need to look at yourself with harshness. You need to look at yourself with somebody else's lens, right? Get somebody else to look at you, to give you that harsh, critical feedback that you need. I needed it, and I still need it. We need it all the time, right? I've said this on the channel before, that, the quality of the video here, hopefully, I hope, is better than the quality of the videos, a year ago. And I hope that in 2 years, I look back on this video and I can see the growth that I've, kind of weaved into my practice in those next 2 years of development and evolution of RootsofLife.org, right? That's what we do. But it requires ongoing, focused commitment, right? So many people in the wellness world have been told this story that we have downloaded something that's magical. We have healing abilities that nobody else has, or we can manipulate the energy of the universe to heal other people. We can do all these magical things conveniently from a thing that you learned probably within 1 or 2 day training. So, maybe that's how it works. It's probably not, though. And this is not about being harsh. This isn't a harsh statement about your journey. This is an investigation of one of the fundamental precepts of Reiki. Just for today, I will do my work honestly, right? Remember that precept. Remember that precept when you are 4 weeks down the road and nothing's working, or when you're 6 months down the road and nothing's working. Remember that precept when you finally feel like there's some momentum going and you need to continue to build on that momentum, right? Remember that precept when your entire retreat that you've been planning for months doesn't go through because nobody's booked. I've been there. Everybody else who's in that 2% has been there. You will hopefully be there as well because you are getting out of the 98% of people who, when they don't get their retreat booked, when they don't have signups, when they don't have clients, when they can't figure out how to pay the bills, they quit, right? That's the commodification of the practice. When we go to school, like I was saying earlier in the video, to study a topic, we study that for years, right? What is it with Reiki? It's the same thing. What is it with holistic wellness? It's the same thing. It demands ongoing learning. It demands ongoing surrendering to the practice, right? And if we're not doing that, if we're not constantly trying to make ourselves better, constantly deepening our practice, constantly learning, constantly turning into the self, constantly following the precepts, constantly working on this practice, well, then what's going to shine through, right? That space that you're holding is going to shine through when you're in front of your clients. If you haven't put in the long hours in your own practice, if you don't have the depth of knowledge, then you're going to be shaky when you're in front of your client. You're not going to be saying things correctly. Your way of explaining things is going to be a little bit off balance. That's totally normal, by the way. That's normal. It's a moment for you to recognize where you need to do more work, right? Because the client will recognize it. They might stay around for 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, but eventually they're going to recognize. Your students, if you're a teacher, if you're not going into the depth of your practice, your students will recognize it and they will leave. They will go to find other teachers, right, who are going to give them the depth of practice. So that all comes back to you. It comes back to how are you viewing your practice, right? Are you spending hours on it every day? Are you working on it? Are you investing in it? Are you going into the precepts, into the practice, into the roots, whatever it is, whatever modality it is, right? Are you fully committed to that modality first and foremost? That separates you from the people who are viewing it as a commodity. And if it's viewed as a commodity, then that means the clients or the image or the personification of the self or the story that's put forward, all of that at some point is going to become transparent, right, to the client. They're going to leave because you don't have that depth. So if we are trying to get into that 2% of people who are going to make it a career, right, who are going to put themselves out there to make sure that they keep growing, who are really going to commit to this, if you're going to put yourself into that group, then get ready for failure. Please get ready for failure. I've said this in the steps that I had in my Reiki business, like I think it's called the steps to avoid and growing and establishing your Reiki business. It's a video here on my channel. I've gone through so many iterations of my website. I've gone through so many different domain names, so many different manuals, so many different this and that. I can't even begin to think about how many times I've had to reinvestigate myself. I've spent the past 6 hours working on my website, right? Every single day. If this is your full-time job, you treat it like a full-time job every day, right? And to me, I think the most important tool that separates the 2% from the 98% is this. It's not the commodification of the product. It's not about how much you go into the self. It's not about how much you study. It's not even about the depth of your practice. It's about recognizing no separation. And let me explain what I mean by that. See, in Reiki, we have this understanding of Honjaze Shone, right? This distance symbol. And we have the understanding of Daikomyo, the energy of the universe. Reiki in itself means the energy of all things, or universal energy. So, what do I mean by this idea of doing it for the self? Well, you see, if I turn up to a class and I view my students in the class actually as my teachers, because they are part of me, right? If we are all part of the same energy, which is the energy of the universe, then there's no separation, right? Separation is a myth. So everybody who attends my classes are actually my teachers, right? Everybody watching this video, all of you are my teachers. Everybody in the Usui Reiki Roho support and community group on Facebook, you're all my teachers. Everybody who I meet along the way who came to Kyoto, my teacher, Inamoto Sensei, all of you are my direct teachers because we are not separated. So when I am projecting my trainings out, when I am projecting my sessions with my clients into this external reality, right, into the space around me, if they are a reflection of myself, then they are a reflection of what I need to work on, right? So it's this really beautiful juxtaposition, I think, that what can I do here? What can I do to ensure that I'm part of that 2%? Well, to me, what I can do is my most honest work, right? So when everybody comes to my trainings, what are they coming there for? They're coming there to learn, of course, right? So I better show up with my knowledge. I better show up with knowledge that impresses all of my teachers. It's the way that I kind of look at it. And I think it's a really humbling way to look at the practice, right? Our external world, all of this is just a reflection of the internal self, after all, isn't it? So if all of the people who are in my class, if I view them as my students, then I'm viewing them as a commodity in many ways, right? I'm viewing them as a paying client. So I'm viewing the transaction here as a monetary gain. What if we view everybody who is in front of us actually as our teachers, and we are projecting our learning and our growth to our teachers, right? It's this beautiful dance, this reflective place that we can put ourselves in. And to me, when I think into that space, when I think about my clients or my trajectory or my retreats or my trainings, right, or my healing sessions or my website or whatever it might be in the external realm as my teacher, because it's a reflection of myself, then that encourages me to stay in the precepts, right? Do my work honestly, be kind, be grateful, not to worry, and don't get angry, right? Because how could I? How could I get angry and worry? How could I not be grateful? How could I not be so loving and kind and grateful for everybody's assistance on my journey? So it's kind of like this moment to be in front of the crowd of teachers who are all here to support my growth. So the least that I could do is put all of my honesty and all of my dedication and all of my effort into what I put forward, right? I hope that kind of balance there makes sense. I hope that view on the world makes sense. And I hope that helps your practice, right? Because if we start to look at our practice not as a commodity, not as work, not as a transactional affair, if we look at the people who come to us as our teachers, and if we recognize our time in front of the people who come to us as an opportunity to share all of the growth that we have done via the dedication to our practice, then that means we're not commodifying the practice. It means we're evolving with the practice. That single thing separates the 2% from the 98% of people who will fail. So I hope that helps everybody. I hope it helps to incorporate Reiki and holistic wellness into the trajectory of your life, not just from a business perspective, but from the totality of yourself, right? View it as something that you commit to. View it as something that you strive to be a part of your daily life. You strive to incorporate it into everything you do. That's going to bring you to the 2% as opposed to the 98% who will give up. As always, everybody, be well and in Gosho to all.